Good afternoon. I'm Courtlandt Butts. The reason why I was looking up there was because my name was missing a letter, and I was actually just about to talk to you about my name. Interesting. Anyway, I have a message for you. And the message for right now is to simply have the conversation. Have the courageous conversation. Have it with yourself and have it with others so that we can transform the world. The story that I want to share with you today is not so much about the work that we do. You can find out plenty of that on our website. I think Saul set me up really, really well in terms of the work that I've been doing with his organization. I'll give you a little bit about what we do as a company, but I really just wanted to share with you all what it took for me to stay focused while I'm engaged in this work in social justice. With a name like Butts, elementary school was tough. And every day, the teacher would call the roll. And every day, depending on the grade, and it was all of the grades, including preschool, the teacher would call the roll and go down this list. And after she called each name on the roll, I would sink lower and lower into my chair because my name was coming up. Anderson, Adams, Butler, Butts. And then the room would erupt with laughter. And let's face it, in elementary school, once it's funny, it's always funny. What also was true at that time is that there was actually an attack on part of my identity. One of our young people today spoke deeply to you all about how important it is for us to monitor and take care of the identity of our children. And there was a part of my identity that was under daily attack, systemic attack, because the role happened every day, and it happened at the same time, and the laugh was always the same. And it didn't help if the teacher on occasion gave a little giggle. And now there's permission for my identity to be under attack. And if it didn't happen during roll call, for sure there was follow-up, if you will, during recess. And so the thing was this: I really needed to find out that there was a part of me that had more value and just didn't stand for something to be laughed and jeered at. So I looked up my name. Butts is English in origin. What I found out, I looked on this thing called the Dewey Decimal System back then. And I'd opened up a book, like I went to a library and I found some of the information that I'm about to share with you. Way different than the Google stuff, even though I found it on Google too. And with it being English in origin, it used to be the vernacular of archery tournament or going to an archery tournament. With associations of an archery tournament, there were many messages being sent by bow and arrow back then, so it became associated with messenger. And in there, it would say, means archery tournament or messenger. Vernacular was, send for the butts because I have a message that needs to be sent. My first name, Courtlandt, Courtlandt, is Dutch in its spelling. It literally means of or from the shortlands or the islands. Full translation of my name is Courtlandt Butts, messenger from the islands. Now I can ride with that. I'm feeling a little bit better. So what happens is, in many cultures, going deeper into my own, my African background, my Native American background, my Irish background, there was a common theme that was surfacing. And one of the things that they were naming in each one of those traditions was, your name means something. And whether you want to or not, whether you know it or not, you will live up to your name in your life because it was given to you by the stars. And so I started to think, in what ways am I living my life by the stars? Am I living the name that I was given? Well, for sure, to this day, I started working for a company called Pacific Educational Group, and I'm going to share a little bit about that a little bit later. But this is my 10th year in the company. And I literally go from city to city, sometimes country to country, delivering a message of love and hope. Because when I see you all, I see you in our, what I believe, first identity, which is human being. Now, since human being, we've had some other identities layered upon us. Some because of geography, our environment helps shapes us. Some because of biology, can't help that. Some are socially constructed identities. And some of those socially constructed identities were for our benefit. Some of them were taken and turned into opportunities to create institutions of oppression. Race happens to be one of those identities used for that purpose. And so what our company does is essentially we try to come along and we say, you're going to need a protocol to help us figure out in what ways has that social construction impacted my very humanity. And so that's part of our work. So we got different frameworks that we use to actually go into it. I'll share that with you if I actually talk to you or when we actually talk after this. But what I want to share right now is what kept me playing in the game. As a matter of fact, the moment that I'm going to share with you is the moment that I wanted to quit and not do this anymore and not be the messenger, and it's the moment that I wanted to stay. We were being sent to what we call a tough district. So if we say it's a tough district, what that means is our white colleagues don't want to hear anything about race or racism. As a matter of fact, if you bring it up, there's going to be a hostile push. But it also means this. It means our colleagues of color, Black, Latino, some Asian, they're saying things like this. The only reason why there's still racism is because people like you keep talking about it and bringing it up. And now you have no allies whatsoever in that room. As a matter of fact, the people that brought us in knew this was going to be the case. And what they did was they said, we want the president and CEO of your company to come in and do the facilitation, along with a longtime trusted friend, Dr. Will Walker, who was in the company way before I was. So this two-person team was supposed to come in and handle business. Glenn got sick, president and CEO of our organization. Will got sick, and Glenn got pulled away on another project. So they sent in Courtlandt, the new guy, 3 months on the job, along with another colleague of mine, brilliant colleague, brilliant friend, knows a lot about this work. She's the one, white female, that hired me into the company. But when we got in front of that crowd, the dynamic that they played on was, look at that white woman tell that black man what to do again. Y'all are supposed to be teaching us about racial equity. Now, before we even got onto that stage, before we got there, I'm laying out this perfect storm about why I wanted to quit. Before we even got there, before we went up, she bumps me and she does this. Enemy, 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 enemy. Now I'm already scared to death. And now she's pointing out the faces of the people that I believe are going to eat me alive when we get in front of that stage. Now, if anybody has co-facilitated before, you'll appreciate this next piece of the storm. While we were facilitating in front of this hostile crowd, and the enemies were doing exactly what she predicted, she does an open correct. And she does it more than once. So people that have not facilitated an open correct is just what it sounds like. I'm in partnership with somebody else. I made a mistake because I'm new, and she openly corrected me from across the room. And all that did was make it worse. Now it's turned up. And the thing was this: we have a 2-day training that we call Beyond Diversity. It was that 2-day training that I was facilitating. At the end of that day, I went to my hotel room, and I was sitting on the edge of my bed thinking, what's going to be my exit strategy? I was holding the Courageous Conversations book thinking, man, maybe I should have read to them what's on page 59. That didn't work, because I did that. Like when they pushed me, I said, well, on page 59 it says this. But running to the technical solution wasn't enough. As a matter of fact, I even sat there and I said, maybe I can tell them I'm allergic to flying, then they can't fly me anywhere anymore. Now, mind you, at this point, I had been to 11 different countries. This would have been a big lie that I was telling. But I was prepared to tell it because of what I was going through in that room. I had forgotten who I was. I had let the fear take me over, and I also had some help. There were things getting to me. I lost my purpose as the messenger. I was so emotionally beat down on that day that I didn't want to go back the second day, but unfortunately, there was a second day. And on that second day, on day 2 of Beyond Diversity, back then, we used to show a video in the morning, thank God, because that ate up most of the morning. But then that afternoon, they wanted us to debrief. Debrief meant, let's read through the evaluations that this crowd wrote about you all. Courtlandt sucks. He's the reason why we still have racism. Why are we spending our taxpayers' dollars on this clown? The facilitators were boring and uneventful. I didn't learn anything. They said, you got some more. I said, I'm done. It was a stack of 100. I think I stopped at number 7. And when I said I was done, I meant I was done. Not done reading, but done with this work altogether. I flew home to Atlanta. My brother picked me up from the airport, and he pulls in front of the driveway, and like I mentioned before, I was so emotionally beat down from the experience that I couldn't even get out of the car. And he looks at me, and he says, man, what's the matter with you? And I said, I can't do this work. As a matter of fact, anybody hear of Dr. Asa Hilliard? He's a world-renowned psychologist. We base a lot of our frameworks off of his work. And he asked us a very fundamental question, which is, do we have the will, skill, knowledge, and capacity to educate all children? And I said to myself, if this is what it takes, then no, I don't have it. I want to do something else. I was down. My brother looks at me and he says, man, look at my house. He's got a really nice house, by the way. I said, yeah, I'm looking at it. He said, I consider that house my house and your house because I've been watching you my whole life, and you've always done things even when people told you that you couldn't do it. And so you made me believe that I could do things, especially when people told me that I couldn't do it. And then he says this, I'm still watching you, big brother. What are you going to do now? What was I going to do? What I did was, not only do I know what's on page 59, but I also know who I am because I was reminded by my little brother. And by the way, his last name is Butts too, which means he had a message for me. And his message was, I'm still watching. So it wasn't that I didn't realize this before, that our children are watching us all the time. And if anybody that has kids or had to teach kids or had to work with kids, you know that they are more likely to do what we're modeling for them than what we actually tell them. And so I had to stay engaged. I had to go deep into the conversation. I had to figure out, why were the people in that audience more convicted about their beliefs than I was of mine? When I first got into the work, it was a romantic approach. People would turn around and say things like, oh, you work for Courageous Conversations? You got to do racial equity work? Oh, and I'm like, yeah, you know, somebody's got to do it. And that was cool until I got tried at my core. And then I had to figure out, why do I want to stay now? And I figured it out. I need to have the conversation. I'm encouraging you all to do the same because it is the thing that has led me to what was mentioned earlier by my new friend Yarrow, my superpower. I found my purpose. My purpose is the uplift of all of humanity and the protection of this planet. I am clear about this. What was also mentioned before, once you find that thing, are you willing to die for it? Yes, I am. So what we're asking you to do, what I'm asking you to do, is just consider, where are your convictions? And first, in terms of my path, I started with, was I living my name? The other thing that was shared with me, even about name, was, even if you don't know what your name means, will you create a name for yourself that impacts all of humanity, like my new friend Joe? What will we do? We invite you to have the conversation. Have it with yourself. Have it with the rest of the world so that we can transform the world. I'm Courtlandt Butts. Thank you.